Hey guys, before we get to the episode, I wanted to let you guys know something. Obviously, you're a fan of podcasting. You found me because you listen to podcasts. You might even have a podcast of your own. I love podcasting. It's literally become my life. I've been able to build a successful business. I've been able to speak all over the country. I've formed my own live events. I've also connected with some of the top people on the planet. And I've gone on to help other entrepreneurs and other influencers grow a podcast so they can also grow their brand, their income, and so much more. If podcasting is something you're interested in, or if you're already podcasting and you're looking to get a little bit better, I am actually teaching people the secrets to podcasting with purpose. I've developed a course, which I'm going to be teaching live here over 3 weeks in March, and I wanted to extend an offer to you. All you have to do is go to purposedrivenpodcaster.com and sign up today. I usually charge thousands of dollars for this information, and this time it is only $297. So head over to purposedrivenpodcaster.com, grab your seat, get live training from me of how to grow a podcast, how to use it to monetize, how to grow your brand, how to do all of these things, and we're going to have a ton of fun doing it. So purposedrivenpodcaster.com. I can't wait to see you guys there. Welcome to the Growth Now movement. I'm your host, Justin Shank. I'm an entrepreneur, speaker, and podcaster who years ago decided to go on a journey on how to grow in all areas of my life. What I found out was it's really a matter of focusing on the 4 pillars of life: business, relationships, spirituality, and wellness. And that's what we do here. We explore how to continuously grow in those areas, all while having a ton of fun doing it. I'm really excited you're on this journey with me. Now let's get to this week's episode. This week, I sit down with Jeff Lopes. If you attended the virtual summit last week, you already know a little bit about Jeff Lopes, as he was on one of the panels along with myself and Tom Singer. And we really dove into branding your business and everything like that. But really, this conversation is about how to grow a heart-centered business, how to take care of your family, how to be a great dad, how to be a strong entrepreneur, and how to balance all of that. You see, Jeff is a proud father of 2, a husband, and an entrepreneur for the past 25 years. Jeff has founded numerous companies from inception to 7- and 8-figure corporations. Included in these is True Blue Homes, a portfolio of vacation rentals properties across the northern parts of Ontario, Canada, and Kimura, which is a boxing/martial arts equipment brand that was founded in early 2006 out of his own basement. Jeff is currently the host of a top-rated entrepreneurial podcast, Jeff Knows Inc., which you guys can go back and listen to the episode that I was on. Over the past 3 years, he has coached countless entrepreneurs in balancing the obstacles of fatherhood and entrepreneurship and achieving a higher levels of success in both areas. As Fitness Leadership College graduate and certified NLP master and life coach, Jeff has taken all of his experience to create Man's Purpose, which is a platform for entrepreneur dads. Jeff is also the author, releasing his first book named Entrepreneur Dads, which you guys can grab now on Amazon. It's the #1 bestseller across the board. You guys are going to love this conversation. You truly, truly are going to enjoy it. Now, without further ado, let's get to the episode with Jeff Lopes. Jeff, welcome to the show, man.
What is up, brother?
Dude, it's we just recently connected, but I already love talking to you. I love diving into conversations. You just had me on your podcast, and I'm excited to see where this goes, right? Like, just excited to get to know you on an even deeper level and then share that with my audience. But why don't we start with who's Jeff today, and then we'll break down how you got there. But who are you today?
I'm a father of 2 amazing super kids, 12-year-old and a 14-year-old. I've been married for 17 plus years, been an entrepreneur for 25 years. And since last March, my career changed a little, altering path. I still run 2 companies with staffed, but I got into your world, podcasting. I got into pen and paper. I wrote a book that's coming out next week. I was doing it for about 3 years, but I really dove into coaching. And I got myself certified, and I've created a coaching platform called A Man's Purpose, which is for entrepreneurial dads. So that's essentially where I am right now in career-wise.
I love it. So obviously there's a lot to unpack there, right? There's 25 years in this and 17 years of marriage and 2 kids, and, really having that focus on, fathers and entrepreneurs and fathers in business, which I want to get there because obviously that plays a role in some way, shape, or form in my life, as I'm referred to as bonus dad in my house. And so I would love to get into that conversation, but 25 years as an entrepreneur, man, like, number one, that sounds exhausting. That sounds exhilarating. That sounds all these things. So talk a little bit about that journey. Cause like 25 years ago, even the word entrepreneur wasn't that popular. Now I feel like everybody says they're an entrepreneur. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. My journey even started before that. I mean, we had this conversation in the past, and when we did talk a few times, but I mean, I was always that kid trying to hustle, trying to make an extra buck somewhere. I mean, at 12, 14 years old, my dad would drop me off at sports card stores or shows on a Saturday, and I would go in with $10 and come back with 100. I don't buy packs and sell them. I'd figure out a way to make money. I always done that. And then when I was 17, I started my first real company, which lasted about a year and a half. It was a security company. Until this day, the gentleman I ended up selling it to still runs a company. It's called Strictly Security Services. And then at 19, when I was in college, and I was taking fitness leadership in college, I ended up starting my first consulting fitness business, and I ran that for a few years. Didn't sell that one. I ended up closing that one down. We were going through some legal issues with some of my staff. And then I ventured into opening up gyms. I've ran an event company. Like I've been always an entrepreneur one way or another. I've never worked for nobody my whole life, and I'm very proud of that. And that was something I said from day one. I'd rather be on the corner squeegeeing cars than actually taking orders from somebody. That was just my mindset as a kid. And I don't know why, but I just, there were certain things that happened when I was a kid that kind of triggered me to do that. And something, the other day I was talking about this crazy little story. I was 16 years old, and I've never told the story on anybody's show. When I was 16 years old, or 15 or 16, I was working as a stock boy for a store called Zellers back then. It was like a Walmart, but a smaller thing. And it was end of day. It was like 9 at night. Store was closing, and I was pumping out a skid of Javix, and it was boxes of Javix and or Clorox or whatever you want to call it. And I'm pumping it out, and I was trying to rush really quick because I wanted to end my shift. And I turned the corner, and the whole thing collapsed, and bleach went all over all the floors into the clothes department and ruined all this clothes. And the manager comes running at me. I was 15 or 16, bright-eyed, all nervous. I've been working there for like a week or two, and he looked at me. He was like, and he started screaming. He looked at me, and in front of everybody, I remember everybody circled, and he's like, somebody like you're never going to accomplish nothing. You're never going to be nothing your whole life. And for some reason, that always stuck in the back of my head. There's always moments like that stick in your head where I was like, I do not want to work the rest of my life and allow somebody to give me orders like that. And then there's another time where I was already an entrepreneur. I was 19, 20. And that changes how I react and interact with my family and interact with just in general public. I was 19, 20, and I was running a consulting fitness company. And there's a chain of gyms called Premier Fitness. It was 32 gyms owned by one owner. And this guy, his name is John Cordello, absolutely loaded back then. He had Bentleys, he had Ferraris, he had 32 gyms, and I was his golden child. He hired me as a consultant. I was putting in back-end systems into his gym, which is personal training systems to his gym. And one day I went to his house. He had this massive, like, mansion of a house, every type of car. He was there by himself. Wasn't married, never had kids, always by himself because he trusted nobody. He always thought somebody was there to get his money. And I remember looking at myself the one day, and I was like, this guy has everything, but he's so lonely. And I thought I'd never want to be in. So these are just little lessons where I guess have kind of shaped who I am as an entrepreneur. And like you said at the beginning, there's times, don't get me wrong, with mental health, I don't think anyone that will turn around and say they've never had down times or times they've questioned it or times they've questioned why is this happening to me are full of shit. So I've had those moments, and I've had those times where it's like, what am I doing? Should I just get a 9-to-5 job and stop all this stress and stop all this debt and stop all this? But it's just, I would wake up the next day and like, okay, let's start again. And I've always been able to reset myself, reframe my mind. And it's not even through training. It was just, I always found a way to kind of brighten up the day and say, okay, let's move forward and go and try something new always. Right.
Yeah, the word that keeps coming to my mind as I hear you talk about these stories and these realizations is self-awareness. Like being able to see what's happening around you and then having it reflect into your life. Like I feel like I learned that at a very young age just because some of the trauma that I went through as a kid and the things that had happened around me. But like, where did that come from for you? Because at 19 to say, oh, wow, this guy is lonely, even though he's low. Most 19s would be like, well, he's got a Bentley, so he's good. Where did that come from for you?
You know what? I think would be, I've always had a different awareness to things. And I don't know where that truly came from. I mean, I had a great upbringing, and I know people have tough upbringings, and we've been through your story and stuff where, I mean, my parents were blue collar, hard workers, always working. But I never felt like I wasn't not loved. I had tons of love, tons of everything. And there's certain things that happened. and I guess they shaped who I am. We talked about this. Like, I don't really drink. I might have a half a glass of rosé twice a year, and I'll give you an example why that happened. I know. Do we talk about this story in the past?
I think briefly when we first connected, it was a passing conversation.
Yeah. So my mom's side, which is my grandfather, had 11 brothers, one sister, huge family. Out of the 11 brothers, 8 of them died as alcoholics. And I saw how that impacted my mom. So as a kid, 16, 17, I would go out. I was hanging out with my buddies. I'd come home drinking. I'd go hang out. And then one day I got home and I saw my mom. She had like a tear in her eye. And I remember asking her, what's wrong? She goes, my biggest fear, and her biggest fear is, she goes, her biggest fear was seeing me follow that path and being in my bloodline and me becoming an alcoholic, because her family cousins, they had a huge line of alcoholics and a lot of them had passed away.
Right.
And for some reason, seeing my mom in that pain in that moment just triggered something. And all of a sudden I was like, do I really need to do this? And I stopped drinking. I was like 17. I was aware of that already. So I've always found ways of being aware of things and intaking things and sitting back and just almost allowing it to just generate into my body and be like, okay, I understand this. Like, what are my choices? And I've always found there's a choice. And I think a lot of people don't realize the choices. And then when they realize the choice, sometimes a little too late. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times they fall back into what's easy. They kind of say to themselves, I won't be that, or that won't happen to me, or all that stuff. So that self-realization at a young age was massive. How are you implementing that kind of thought process even still to this day in your life? Because I'm sure as you're building out businesses and now the coaching world, which we're going to get into, but as you're doing it, like, how are you adjusting to things that you're seeing in the world? Like, you and I have talked many times about these high profile entrepreneurs and quote unquote influencers that I always throw up in quotes when I say influencers.
Yeah.
We talk about them and kind of how they're, for lack of a better term, manipulating a lot of individuals and the systems and stuff like that. Are you aware of that and trying to approach this coaching side a little bit differently than them? Or are you just approaching it heart-centered how you are?
Be honest, Justin, I entered into this coaching realm originally, like we talked 3 years ago, as just giving back. I've done well financially for myself. I have 9 rental properties. We're doing really well for ourselves. So in my mind, it was like, I've done well. I see all these young entrepreneurs that need a guidance, which I never had guidance. I kind of figured it out myself. I would read, I would figure it out myself. And so I started taking these young entrepreneurs under my arm and I would guide them, teach them, whether it's helping them do a trademark, helping them register a business, helping them write a business plan, whatever I could help them with, I was doing. And I was seeing them succeed and I was seeing them evolve until this day. Like this morning, I got a phone call with one of them that I helped build a decent sized company. And he calls me on a weekly basis just to chat and just to say hi and just to chat. So having that appreciation. So I've always understood that. But as COVID hit and I started to really focus on branding myself and really focus on social media, exactly what you said, I would see all these guys selling these programs and selling this expertise. And I'm like, these guys are 20 years old and they haven't lived through shit yet. And if they have lived through shit, we went through it. We're not going to talk about the person. They've slept on somebody's couch and that's their end story of why they have to hit greatness. Right. Yeah. And I sat there, I'm like, I've taken my son where every doctor told him he had cerebral palsy, being stuck to a wheelchair, to getting ready to run his first marathon. I've taken a relationship with my wife that it was literally on the verge of ending to, we're probably the happiest we are at 17 years of marriage. I've been to my daughter's every event that she's ever had, and I've never missed an event for her. So I've been able to do that as a family man, but at the same time too, business wise, like I've done well for myself. I've succeeded. I've built things. I've learned how to master building something, branding something, and I'm really good at it. So I was like, I have this experience and these guys are all selling this bullshit. And in my head, I'm like, you know what, maybe it's my turn that, like, if I'm going to help if I'm going to give back, I want to be able to now's probably a perfect time to actually be able to give back and teach what I've learned over all these years. Right.
Yeah. So you literally just very briefly ran over very important things that are going on, in your life, and a lot of your focus, right? You talked about your son who was born with cerebral palsy and now you're helping him run races and obviously this marriage that was on the brink of divorce. I want to dive into both of those because I'm learning, right? Yeah. As this role that is new to me over the last year and a half or 2 years or so, that raising children or being a figure in their life in some way, shape, or form can be very, very difficult. Now, these are two very healthy, great children, right? Now, I can't imagine if one of them had something like cerebral palsy or what my parents went through with me when I broke both my hips and like I was wheelchair bound for 3 years of my youth. What was that like when you had that moment where the doctor told you that your son had cerebral palsy, and what was your mindset going into that?
I mean, when he spent his first 4 months at the hospital, as we spoke before, and I was very involved with the doctors through the whole process. So when we were presented with his discharge papers, we actually forced the discharge papers. They wanted to keep him in there for another month. And when we forced the discharge papers, I was aware already, and I had some time to intake what they were going to label my son as. So I was aware of what was going to happen, but I also had that conversation with my wife where I think we had talked about this, where I was not going to allow myself to be 50 or 60 years old and see my son in a wheelchair and be like, I didn't do everything I effing could have done when he was young to get him into a better course of his life. So I made that choice at that moment. I told my wife that we were going to make that. I remember having that conversation. I said, we are going to make the choice. And whether she was with me or not, I was going to do everything I could. And I would spend whatever I had to spend with therapy, whatever had to be done, it was going to be done to give him the best opportunity. I didn't know if it would alter his course. I didn't know what was going to happen. Nobody knows the future, but I was going to do everything I could and relieve and exhaust every opportunity to help better him. That was my mindset from day one going in. So I already had preset in my mind what the work ethic and the mindset of how much effort I had to put into it. So when I started the journey, I was prepared for it. And don't get me wrong, Justin. I mean, I sat there and this is something I really never really talk about, but I sat there and there was moments when I looked at my wife and I'm like, we don't drink, we don't smoke, we work out, we take care of ourselves, we eat healthy. And next to us, there is another mom having a baby and she's a crackhead and her baby's healthy. Why is this happening to us? I questioned my faith. I questioned, why is this happening? I hated the world for a while. Don't get me wrong. Like there was a lot of dark moments, but I realized every time I would get in a dark moment, I would wake up the next day and be like, this is not me being in this moment is not going to help change or alter anything. So I would reframe myself automatically. And I learned how to keep reframing, reshifting, reframing myself. And it was just constant every day. Let's wake up, let's go. And those 4 months, me and my wife were really disconnected, but those 4 months at the hospital, Justin, that was probably the hardest thing as a couple to go through because we were sitting beside each other at the hospital all day. There was a bed. It was the ICU, the 4th floor at Sick Kids Hospital. That room was the most intense room of all this massive hospital. And out of those 6 beds, every couple of days a baby would die and it would be altered. Another baby would come in. And it was just constant rotation. And I'm going to tell you something, which is the craziest thing. And I don't think I might have talked to, I think, Brian about this, Brian Bogart, but I remember we would sit there every day just by my son's bed, the little incubator. We'd sit there from like 7 in the morning till 7 at night, every day, Monday to Sunday. And Monday to Friday, we would never see parents in there. It was just us. And I looked at one day, it was about a month in, and I said to the nurse, I go, can I ask you a question? I go, where are all the other parents? Do they come when we leave? Do they come after work? She goes, no. She goes, they only come on weekends. I'm like, what do you mean they come on weekends? Jesus. She goes, a lot of these parents do not want to build a bond with their child because they know they're going to lose their child, and they don't come to visit. And I stood there and I was just like, and that nurse looked at me, and I get tears every time I think of it. She looked at me, she goes, the reason your son's going to make it out of here is because he knows you guys are here every day with him. And I was just like, it was just moments like that where it was just like, it just, all that work, all that effort, you felt that reward. Like, okay, we're doing the right thing here. We're doing this. Whatever happens, the outcome, we're doing everything we can. And that's all we could do.
Wow. It's so powerful. Like first of all, awful. I almost don't even know what to say. Like that's unbelievable.
But that's reality. But that's a reality, right?
Yeah.
A lot of parents do never understand. I guess that there's that fear of building a bond, or I couldn't understand it, but it was obviously something that happened on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's hard.
What drives you, right? Like obviously as life continues to throw these things at you, what is driving you forward? What sets you apart? Is it the mindset? Is it mentors? What is it?
I'm gonna be honest with you. I had indirect mentors. I had an indirect mentor when I was 19. He's a sales guru, and I never hired him. He was just helping me, and he got me a couple of gigs, and I was standing on stage next to him in front of like 400 or 500 people when I was like 19 doing sales things. But um, he taught me, I guess, a form of NLP before I even knew what that old NLP was at like 19. So I could call him somewhat of an indirect mentor. My grandfather was the only other entrepreneur in my family, but it was in Portugal. So he was an indirect mentor, but I would talk to him on a regular basis over the phone. And, but I've never had a mentor. Like I've never had a mentor. And every time I've, I've exhausted to start working with somebody, it's like something cold pushes me off. And then the other day, I was this close from actually working with somebody. And then I was seeing Mark Cuban on TV, and they were asking Mark Cuban, "Have you ever had a mentor?" And Mark Cuban's like, "I don't believe in mentors." And I stood there and I'm like, interesting. Because at the end of the day, like I've always found a way to figure it out. And I
Yeah.
believe there's enough indirect mentoring out there. You want to read a book, you want to talk to people. There's people like you. There's so many people that will come out of their way and help you. So I've never actually had a direct mentor, but how do I keep myself going? It's just, I just the way I'm built, or I can't even explain it honestly. Justin, I wake up every day and I'm like, I'm excited about the day starting. Like I don't ever not want to keep moving forward. And it's funny that I had long before the whole COVID, I had talked to my wife, and we looked at our finance. We said, with the properties, everything we're doing well. I told her by 45, I just turned 44. I said, by 45, I think I want to do a semi-retirement, maybe work 2-3 days a week, still run the businesses, have my staff running them. And then COVID hit, and I literally took on 5 new things. And I looked at her, it was about a couple months in, and she's like, you ain't slowing down. And I said, honestly, I can't. And it was funny because my grandfather died. That's another story altogether. He was murdered, but he was murdered. He was like 91 years old, and he was murdered at 91. And till the day he died, he was up at 4:30 every morning, still working as an entrepreneur. And as
Whoa.
crazy as is these. I think it's just engraved in you. If you're really a naturally hustler, you're going to have times that you're down, times that you don't have the energy sometimes, but something just triggers you and you just keep going, you keep moving forward, and you just keep that momentum always going once you start building it, right?
Mm. I feel your grandfather got murdered at 91 years old.
Yeah, crazy story. I'm laughing now, but it was a really hard time for us. It was a really hard time for the family because he was my grandfather he's in Portugal. He's had museums named after him. He had schools named after him. Incredible entrepreneur.
Wow.
Later in his life, lost I would say majority of the stuff that he built. He built an empire, then ended up losing it all. I'll give you a little quick story, like a 2-second little Coles note on him. I got pictures of him. Like I got magazine and articles all over the office here, framed of him in magazines and newspapers and stuff. He was a really big entrepreneur, and he had a lot of properties. And as he got older, he was living on his own. And I think a lot of, and he was in obviously a different country. We were near him. His 2 sons were both in Toronto, Canada. And I think a lot of people started taking advantage of him. As you get older, start taking advantage of him. And it was weird because the last like 2-3 years, he didn't want my dad there. He didn't want my uncle there. He was always telling us he didn't want us there. And it was like, we didn't understood. He would always be like, oh, I'm going to a trip to Paris. He would always have an excuse not to have us there. And long story is, he had one property, which was like a club. And he found out that the people that are renting it were using it for other uses, not appropriate uses. And he went in the middle of the night in 91, changed the locks. And the next day they found him, somebody shot him in front of his house, head open shot, and killed him instantly. And that's the end of it. And then when we went to actually, like, when he passed away, like I wanted to go to his funeral. My parents didn't. It was quickly, we found out what was happening. And everything was cleaned up very quickly. There was no bullets. Like it was just a clean job. The cops cleaned everything. It's like something out of a bloody movie. And I was like, is this really happening? It was like, are we really living like this? And quite a few of his properties over the years, we thought he still had his properties. Everything was gone. everything was gone. And and I guess out of fear, out of power, I don't know what it was, but a lot of his properties were gone. He lost pretty much in his last maybe 5 to 7 years of his life. He lost pretty much a lot of it. So he had built his whole empire and ended up losing it all. And I guess higher power, people around him were taking control of his finance, taking control of stuff. We're not us realizing it in all the way in Canada, right? So that's him in a nutshell. That was my it was a really interesting thing. It was like we're living a dream when we heard those news, right? We got a call, and he was being helicoptered to the main city, and we're like, what was happening? And by the time my dad got on a flight with his brother, they got to Portugal. He had been cremated already without even having any permission. So he was already cremated by the time they got there. It was a crazy, crazy story. It happened a little over 11 years ago. Yeah.
Wow. That is absolutely crazy. Like, I hate to say it like this, but you kind of chuckled, so I feel like I can. But what's that movie with Clint Eastwood and El Camino?
Yeah. It was called El Camino.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. Like, that's almost like what I'm picturing in my head, minus what seems like political corruption or whatever else is going on.
Yeah. Small town, a lot of corruption. And it was, I don't even know how you want to word it. It was a mob, or it was something he was involved with. I don't want to say they involved themselves with him, the wrong people. And I think he was so scared of anything. Maybe they scared him. I don't know the truth. I don't think anybody will ever know the truth. But it was a really sad way to end such a amazing career, right?
Yeah. I mean, it seems like he did some epic things, which is amazing, right? Like leaving the legacy of understanding that buildings are named after you. Like, you've done something.
Oh, it's incredible.
Phenomenal.
Like, it's incredible. Like, I have so many newspaper articles, so many, like he built an empire, and essentially he was a developer. And he had contracts with pretty much the country contracts. They would give him land and be like, do whatever you want with it. And he would build schools. He did that for years and years and years. And he did really well for himself. But like I said, it's hard when all that work, all those years mean nothing at the end, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. What fears do you have, right? Like, we talk about how you get up every day and you're excited for the day and you tackle all these things, and it seems like you overcome so much. What fears do you have?
I think there's a lot of, as much as we do and succeed in our lives, there's a lot of insecurities always. We're in a very, even the field we're in a very competitive field. I try not to have that mindset of caring what other people think, but I think that's just human nature. We always cautious of what other people think of us and how we perceive ourselves and how our image is. And a lot of fears that I had earlier in my life when my son was born was not giving him the opportunities, or not giving him the best chance. I always looked at my wife, and I always said, as that journey started, and I said, I'm going to do everything. And I created plans, and we would take 5 steps forward, 10 steps back. And it was always this battle. And I always looked at her. I'm like, I want to hit that fast forward button. I want to have that magic fast forward button and fast forward him to 10 years old and see where he is. So we got there, and now I could clearly see his future. So that part of my life, that fear is gone, because I could see how well he's doing. But I think it's just, there's so many fears as we get older. You stand there and you fear losing your parents, because now it becomes more reality as they get older, losing your parents, putting so much work and effort into something and it not ever coming to par. Like, am I sending a legacy for my kids? Am I doing it right? You always question everything. I think those are just questions you have every day. I think fear is something that we're constantly battling with. I think that's just human nature, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I love that answer. And it's true, because it is, I think fear is something that everybody has, but it's forever evolving. Like, I don't have that forever fear of like,
No.
I've feared this since I was 10 and now I still fear it. But there's certainly always that underlying thing. And it's funny that you brought up like the competitiveness and what we do, showing up as our best self. And that's a fear that I still have some days, like, because there's certain days where I'm like, look, I'm just me. Right. And so who's supposed to listen? So who's supposed to be here is here. But I think the desire to want to compare is always there. Right.
100%. And you realize you shouldn't, and you teach your kids not to, but I think it's just human nature.
Yeah.
right? It's just human nature because you always want to compare and and you could just put out your best foot every single day and you hope people realize and appreciate it, but you're never going to make everybody happy. And you're always, you understand this probably just as much as I do, Justin. Like you could go out and help 10 people. And reality is out of those 10 people, 9 of them will turn around and never help you back.
Yep.
So as long as we have that mindset, and it's sometimes hard to understand that. I'll be honest, I get frustrated sometimes. I sometimes I sit there, I'm like, I just went out and I did A, B, C, D, and E for this guy. And now 2 months later, he's still working on A for me. And I sit there, and then part of me is like, I should not be doing it for that reason. I should be doing it for the reason of I just want to give back. But sometimes it's frustrating. And is that frustration of is everybody's always looking out for themselves. And I try to live a life where I don't look out for myself. I always try to connect people. I always try to network people. I always try to help people. So I just keep doing what I could. But there is times, don't get me wrong, where it's just like, wow, like, what am I doing? Is it all worth it? Right. So you're always questioning things. Right. And I think just human nature. I think that's just the way we're programmed. And if you've got a good soul, you'll just shake your head off and keep moving forward kind of thing. Right.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it's so true, dude. Like, I'm so glad you framed it that way. Like, I think it's important for people to hear that. So let's get to, obviously we talked about your son and how you've helped him and how you guys are now training to be right. By the way, can we talk about your triceps for a second? Holy crap. You posted a photo of you and your son flexing your triceps. Your triceps are as big as my legs.
I used to be a lot bigger, but I'm 6'2", 192. There used to be a time when I don't know if you look through my older pictures. I stepped on stage a few times. So at one point I was like, God, I was like 225, like pretty lean. Like I used to be a big boy when I was younger, and I played competitive baseball pretty. There was a time when I thought I was going to make professional baseball a career, but obviously coming from Canada, that the odds are very low there. But I've always been into fitness. I've always been into taking care of myself. And that's something as a family, we talked about this. I'm very persistent. Like yesterday, it was me, my wife, my daughter, my son. We're all working out together. We're literally all doing a circuit, working out, lifting weights together, which I absolutely, the music was pumping. We're all laughing. And I think that's so important for parents to understand that in the summer, we're all going for bike rides together. We're going for power hikes together. Like we're always involving something that's beneficial to you, but is also spending family time and building memories and laughing, enjoying is so important. So parents have to learn how to migrate those things together. And whether it's working out, whether it's going for a bike ride, whether it's going for a hike, whatever it is, but just moving, just move.
Yeah, I love it. And so you talk about migrating these things together, right? Like obviously you've built massive successful businesses and you still run multiple. Obviously a massively successful podcast, which is called Jeff Knows Inc. By the way, guys, check it out. Comes from Bo Knows. Look it up if you don't know. You're too young if you don't know. But with that being said, you have found a way to marry the two of being a husband and father and being an entrepreneur and a businessman. And now you're helping others do the same. Why is that now what you probably may consider your life's mission, helping people really marry these two?
There is there's tons of reasons, but I mean, one of them is I've over the last 12 years really dove into studying and reading and learning parenting and understanding what drives parents, what alters their mind, what makes them wake up every day, what regrets they have. I think it's a huge thing is regrets. I think a lot of people live their life and when they're in their 50s and 60s, they have these regrets. And I live my life trying not to have regrets. And don't get me wrong, no one's freaking perfect. Okay, let's be honest. I'm sure when I'm 16, 17, I'm going to have some regrets that I should have changed things or done things differently. But I try to live every single day that I don't have regrets. And how I've done that is creating this harmonization between family life and business. And how I've done that is there's so many things. One is learning how to build memories. And when I'm talking about build memories, is when we talked about this, is not about when my kids do something good. It's not about here, Tiago, here's a present. I don't give a shit. My son will look at it for 2 minutes, play with it for 2 minutes, and throw away. It's building a memory. Okay, cool. You did this. Let's go to the batting cage. Let's go out for the day. Let's go get ice cream. It's building those memories. So something were to happen to me, I walk out of my house today and I have a car accident. Something were to happen to me, and I don't come back home, which is reality. Every day you get out of your house, that's an opportunity that happening. I want my son to have so many good memories that he could literally 20 years from now be sitting down having a coffee with a friend or been on a podcast and talking about memories he built with his dad. That's one thing I do every single day, and I try to do that for a reason. Second is, how do I build those memories? Is you need the time. And I've learned how to master my schedule. I've learned how to block everything. When I literally will block, okay, I'm going to play catch with Tiago. That's in my schedule on my phone. Catch 2 to 3:30, playing catch. No one else matters at that time. My daughter has a dance recital. My daughter's got dance practice. Boom, boom. It's in there. It's locked. And I don't care about nobody at that point. My phone's off. That's my time. And I've learned to master and understand that. And I've learned to realize that if people truly want to work with you, if people truly enjoy working with you, they will understand that family comes first. And if you don't get family comes first, then find somebody else to work with. And I've learned how to understand that, right? And it's something I'm really passionate about, right?
I love that. And time blocking is huge, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, and it's amazing how many people do the act of time blocking and then allow things to interrupt it. Like, it doesn't matter. Like that's, and so you have that whole entire, cool, you've done the first step. The second step is you actually need to stick to it now. And there's so many people who don't do that. And like, I'm very much like, somebody had sent me their calendar. They wanted me to be on their podcast. And I felt terrible, but all they had was early mornings or late nights. And I go, early mornings are for me to work out and late nights are for me to be with family. And so I can't do this. So if you want to open something up, I can. Most people will be like, I need to get on this podcast. Let me click a link. But really for me, it's my well-being, my family's well-being, and everything else. It comes second to that first stuff. And I love that you do that.
You understand your priorities.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's simple. You understand your priorities and you understand what's important to you. That's all it is. And you've made that choice. We all have choices. You've made that choice already in your head. And as long as people can learn how to make that choice, everything else comes. Everything comes to you don't have to build a business in one day. If you take an extra 3-4 days to build whatever you have, it'll happen. And if it's smart and successful, it's going to happen. Right? I mean, I wake up every day and I try to think of new ideas, new innovations for my company, for my businesses to make sure they're growing, even though we're going through COVID right now. And a lot of the things that we deal with are shut down. But I come in, I think of the idea, I write it down, I get it, and I project it to my staff and I say, let's figure this out. And if it doesn't, and in my head, I come in and don't get me wrong, I'm like, I got to get this done today. But if it's not finished today and it's 2:45 and I got to go home or 3:00 and I'm like, okay, cool, we're done. I'm out of here. And then, it just builds it, right? I try to be home from 3 to 7 every day. Obviously we're running today will be a little exception, but I'm still going to be home for dinner. I'm still going to sit down and have a meal with my family. I'm still going to find out what my daughter did today, who she talked to. Being a teen, I want to be so involved in her life that she has an issue or a problem. It's not going like, oh, I don't talk to my dad about this. No, I talk to my dad about this. Let's just talk. Yeah. I want to have that open dialogue at all times with my kids that for one, when they're 16, 17, they still want to go on vacation with me because I'm still the cool dad. But at the same time too, if they are going through mental health, they're going through something in their life, they need somebody to talk to. I want to be the one they talk to. I don't want them going to a psychiatrist and all that stuff. If I could be their first line to talk to, and if I could help them solve it, I wanted them to be comfortable enough to come to me and talk to me about it.
I love it, man. So one question I like to ask every single person on the podcast, because, as you know, as well as I do, you get the opportunity to talk to some of the most successful people in the world, however you define success. Yeah. And so my question for you is, what is your definition of success? And what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
Definition of success is wealth equals financial freedom, right? So success for me is being able to spend 3 hours with my son or 4 hours with my son today and not have to worry about, if I'm not working, I can't pay my bills. So financial success, I think that is the biggest thing for me, is understanding that everything I do is allow myself more time to do the things I love. I think that's the first thing. And the 3 things, something I've incorporated a few years ago is, one thing is health. And we talked about this before. Health is a huge part of my life. And I am a strong believer, if you don't have your health, you don't have nothing. So health is the top of my epitome, taking care of myself so I'm able to take care of the ones I love. So health is first. Second, I've incorporated, I don't call it meditation, I call it breathing. I think that's something I've really, really incorporated in the last few years, where every morning I'll take my time just to slow the day down before it starts. Slow the day down. And it's not, I don't have this perfect meditation where I'm conscious. It's just, I just breathe, think of all the shit that happened the day before, let it run through my head, let it out, and then think of what's going to happen today and what I want to get accomplished, and take it, reset myself. And that's a huge part of my morning. And another thing is just constantly, indirectly through mentoring. We talked about this mentoring indirectly. I try to always learn, and that's through audiobooks, podcasts. I like to learn as much as I possibly can. And I'm always trying to master something. Like right now, I'm very comfortable interviewing people, talking to people, but I'm learning and I'm trying to how to portray my message. So eventually when I get on a stage, I'd be able to portray my message in a proper dialogue that people connect with me. So I'm learning that now. I actually said, this is my goal for the next couple of months, is really learning how to refine how I speak to people in person. So that's one thing I'm mastering. So always try to improve yourself, take the time to reflect on everything, and take care of yourself.
I love it, man. I love it. So I wrap up every single interview with the same question, but before we get there, how do people get a hold of you? Where do they find you? What's all the good stuff?
Yeah, if you're an entrepreneurial dad, I'd love to work with you. I mean, I'm trying to build like a brotherhood for entrepreneurial dads. It's a very simplified program, but you're getting tons of value. We do weekly accountability with all our entrepreneurs. We have a monthly mastermind. We do a monthly Q&A. You get 2 videos a month. It's a whole package you're getting for a very, very low cost. So I'm trying to grow that. And you can check that out at jeffreylopes.com. Is JeffReylopes. And then catch me on IG. Instagram is where I'm most present, and it's at Jeff Lopes. And then you could, once you're done listening to Justin's podcast, if you have any extra time in your day, the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast, you could come check us out there as well.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. I've actually been a guest on there, so go check it out.
Justin's will. I mean, I don't know when this is to be released, but yours will be released in the next couple of days as well. I think Monday or Tuesday next week.
I love it, man. Jeff, this conversation has been phenomenal. Like I said, I wrap up every single interview with the same question, and that question is: in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
Taking my son home from the hospital. That one day at 4 months old, when we took him home, I had preset in my mind what had to happen, but it was the reality of coming home and sitting there looking at my wife with his newborn, with tubes still in his nose. When my son came home, Justin, he was drinking, he could only take in 1 ounce. So if you think of a little stuffed animal, like the little baby bottle, we actually had a baby bottle we got at a toy store, and that was what he was taking, because he had he had never swallowed in his life, because he always through tubes. So when we got home, we had to teach him how to swallow. So we would put his little bottle, he would take a half an ounce or an ounce, and he would throw up. His reflex. So we were constantly all day long, every half an hour, trying to get him to drink an ounce and teach him how to spit and swallow, spit. So we had to reteach that. So when I got home with him, my biggest growth was it was just me looking in the mirror and like, let's get this shit done. I had no choice at that point. You got to grow, you got to adapt, you got to take charge. And I think that was business, everything in life. I think that was my greatest moment where it's like, I had no choice. And I think the best entrepreneurs or best fathers or best, whatever you want to call in this world, people that really succeed at something, I think a lot of times is they're put into a corner where they have no choice. And sometimes that fear and that scarceness of being in a corner, we have no choice, is what creates the greatest entrepreneurs, the greatest fathers, greatest leaders. And I think at that point, I was stuck in a situation where I had no choice, and I did what I had to do to survive and keep my son surviving, keep my family surviving. So I think that was my biggest moment of growth.
Jeff, this conversation, like I said earlier, has been phenomenal. I have a feeling you're going to be back on the show in the future, because we could have gone in the 10,000 different directions to teach lessons and just have fun chatting. So thank you so much for doing what you do.
I appreciate you, buddy. I really enjoy our conversations. We've known each other a very short time, but I really, we vibe. There's a great connection. So I love talking to you, and I appreciate you.
Dude, thank you, man. Hopefully we'll be together soon. And whether it's in Toronto in your new place that you're building out, or somewhere in the United States, who knows? I've never been to Canada. You guys are the nicest people on the planet. Let's hang out there. But thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.